We are rural women. We are strong. We're ambitious. We're leaders. And we inspire. Some of us are mothers and caregivers, partners, workers and community members, friends. And we don't do it alone. We seek community, connection, and representation of people like us. 100 Rural Women plants that seed. We aim to cultivate a community that empowers rural women and lifts one another up. Welcome to our Spotlight series, where we interview amazing women who are making a difference for rural communities across Minnesota, because we believe that women like you deserve a spotlight. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to be talking with Nora and for everyone to hear about this project that she's been working on. If you were at our webinar earlier in 2022, she talked about her project with the Initiators Fellowship, and now we're going to deep dive more into her as a person and what she does and this project and how people can support. So I'm not going to introduce you too much. I'll let you do that. Can you tell us about yourself and what you do and your connection with rural?
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here. This is a great opportunity and I really appreciate it. My name is Nora Hertel. I'm a journalist with 10 years of experience in the field, and I'm the founder of Project Optimist, which is a digital news startup. And before I kind of talk about all the things that we do, I wanted to share my why. That's kind of something I've been honing for the last year or so. And it really is infused in the work of Project Optimist. So personally, my why is to cultivate compassion and wisdom in the world. And I think that Project Optimist does that through sharing information, sharing stories and inspiration, and yeah, so I just wanted to share that because I think a lot of times we just start listing off like, here's all the projects and the programs, but those are things that I really value, that I try to cultivate in myself and think really are important in our communities. So that's kind of underlying a lot of my work, even before, when I was a reporter at newspapers, and I always kind of kept those two things in mind because I think journalism is really good at doing that, at cultivating compassion and connection, and also wisdom, which is kind of the bigger, deeper word for knowledge and understanding. So Project Optimist itself, like I said, it's a digital news startup. So we're all online. We have a newsletter. The website is almost all the way up. So that will have the journalism as well. We focus on solutions journalism. It's a practice of journalism that is officially defined as rigorous evidence-based reporting on responses to social problems, instead of just focusing on problems. And that, a lot of us experience that when we read the news. There's kind of a negativity bias in journalism. It's actually a negativity bias in our psychology. We're very drawn to that. So solutions journalism is kind of pushes against that and helps provide a sense of possibility and hope for people through journalism, stories about responses to problems. So that's the solutions journalism side. We feature local art. In the last couple of months, we've had a series called Artist's Joy, which artists have chosen some of their favorite pieces, and then with descriptions about what are they showing and why, what's the symbolism behind what's in the artwork itself. So that has been a really fun project to mix it up. I've also commissioned artists to illustrate stories. We did a comic that went along with a series on veteran suicide prevention. So that's a lot about Project Optimist. There's more to it that I'll get into a little bit later. But to tell you a little bit more about myself and my connection to rural women. So I was a reporter with the St. Cloud Times for 4 years up until about a year ago. And that's when I learned about 100 Rural Women, and I was immediately a fan. I was a political reporter at the St. Cloud Times. And so, was just really interested in that work because I know I was seeing a lot of interesting activity in central Minnesota, and I guess you can consider me a fan.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you here as part of 100 Rural Women, and I'm really excited to dive more into Project Optimist and ask you more about it because I I just love it. I love that you're doing that, especially when a lot of times we're encouraged to keep up with current events and watch the news and be aware, but we're kind of flooded with a lot of negative things, and a lot of things I feel like in the news are phrased uh, really intense and scary. And so to have an outlet that is, these are things that are actually going well, and actually the world is not crashing and burning. It's really important. And the work you're doing is super beneficial and impactful. So I'm excited that you started this. And I do have a question about that. Is it something that you have like a team of journalists that write things, or do people from the community submit things that they want to write, or art or things like that? How does that work?
So for the first year, I had a list of stories and I did a bunch of the reporting, and then I recruited some freelance reporters to do other projects. I am currently recruiting a reporter to do some work this year, and have been in conversation with 4 audio reporters. So we're going to have some podcasts this year. I'm really excited about that. So it's me plus freelancers, and I'm at the stage in 2023 where I'm hoping to hire people to help on the business side, and then later in the year to help on the journalism side to provide a little bit of separation so that the journalism can be even more independent from the business side, and also just so that there can be more, it can just kind of grow and develop and expand, because right now we're doing 2 original pieces of journalism a month on average, and I'd like to have more coming out because there's so many stories out there.
Hmm. Well, that's amazing and really incredible to watch this project grow. Can you remind me, when did you start Project Optimist?
I started working on it in earnest in 2021.
Okay.
I took some training, entrepreneur training, and then I left my job in November of that year and filed the paperwork and launched the first landing page and started that at the end of the year. And then this first year, 2022, I would consider it like a minimum viable product, is what they call it in entrepreneur circles, where you are kind of experimenting all the time and collecting data on what and feedback on that first product, which is the newsletter for me. And on your previous question, I also had started doing some training, and I trained a group of students and a community writer on journalism 101 and social and solutions journalism, and have been editing their work, and I'll publish that too. That's a little bit more column style editorial writing, but because a lot of them don't have background in journalism, but that's allowing some different voices to get for us to highlight some different voices.
It's really, really cool. So you mentioned a little bit you quit your job. Can you tell us about your previous work and your education and what led you to be doing this?
Sure. So I grew up in Indiana, in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is a pretty big city. And I did want to mention too. So I didn't grow up in a rural community, but my extended family is from Batesville, Indiana, which is a pretty small town in rural Indiana, and um, that has like a very special place in my heart. The family farmhouse is there, where my uncle and aunt still live, and downtown is the Hertel shoe store where a different uncle and aunt run the shoe store, and my family also has a hunting cabin down there, and I just have a lot of happy memories um, visiting there and having a different landscape than the city. So I grew up in Indianapolis. And then I went to school in Wisconsin, in Appleton, Wisconsin. That's the northeast part of the state near Green Bay. And I went there to study music. I play the flute, and I thought I was going to play in an orchestra. I thought I was going to be a professional flute player for my career. And I went to Lawrence University because they have a great music program. I also studied French there. And I still love music and French, and I kind of followed those two passions through college, and then traveled in those fields. So I went to Haiti right after I graduated college, and I taught music there for the summer. And then I
Oh,
moved to
cool.
France, and I taught English there. And then when I came back, I joined he's now my husband. We were still just dating at the time. We moved together to Florida, where he was getting his master's degree, and I started working for Florida State University in their modern languages department. There was an institute for French and Francophone studies. So I was able to, and a lot of these skills have shown themselves to be really valuable for me as an entrepreneur. I kept the books. We had our own endowment, so a pool of money that we used to organize conferences, and we published some journals, and I did the bookkeeping. So all three of those things I'm doing those things now at Project Optimist. But yeah, so I was able also to use my French at the time. I was teaching French classes for little kids, and I was on a board of directors for a French association in Florida. So we were there for 2 years, and yeah, it's just kind of weird to think about how much I moved around when I was in my 20s, just following jobs and passion, and also my husband's jobs and passion. We kind of took turns. Yeah, so after Florida, we moved back to Wisconsin, where we have a lot of friends, and that's where we met at college. And he found it was his job that we were following. And I worked as a waitress, which I think everybody should do
Yeah.
for that kind of public or community customer service experience is very valuable. And just important to understand and be compassionate to the people that do that work now. So I was a full-time server, and then I went to graduate school for journalism. I had done journalism before, and it was hard to break in. And I wanted to, I did a lot of soul searching and knew that was really what I wanted to do. So I went back to school for it, and I started doing hyperlocal community journalism and state house reporting as well. And so then for the next 10 years after that, I was covering politics. So from Wisconsin, I spent a little bit of time in South Dakota. I guess that was my next time really rural. I moved to Pierre, South Dakota in the middle of winter. So that's right in the middle of the state. It's a pretty small city, very beautiful. I really love the prairie landscape. And I covered the state house there for 6 months and then moved to back to central Wisconsin. And we lived there for 3 years in Wausau, Wisconsin, at the Wausau Daily Herald, which is a newspaper. I really liked that community. It was a little bit smaller than the St. Cloud metro area, but it's really close to the north woods of Wisconsin and lots of good outdoor activities. And then transferred from there to central Minnesota. My husband's from Minnesota, so we had that discussion of, we've been moving for 10 years, where are we going to settle down? And Minnesota was what we decided, because he grew up here in the cities, and we found a spot between the cities and St. Cloud. We're in St. Michael, so it's a very small city. We have woods in the backyard, which I really love. And we thought about a hobby farm, but I'm glad we didn't, because that allows us to focus on our other projects.
Wow. So, yeah. Oh, I don't want to cut you off if you're going to keep going.
No, I think that's the professional trajectory.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, what a story you have. You've done so many different types of jobs. You've been not only all over the country, but all over the world. I mean, Haiti and France, and living there and teaching. Those are incredible experiences. And I think it's so inspiring too, because you thought that you were going to do one thing in school, and then, you thought you were going to be a professional flute player. And now you're starting this whole project about positive news. And that's just so inspiring and encouraging, because you can have multiple careers. And I think this is a theme that has been coming up in conversations at 100 Raw Women and outside of it. But just that you don't have to do one thing, and that thing, you just have to figure out what's next. And that's amazing. Like, I just think that is so cool, and has built so much for you to be able to bring to your journalism too. So that's really cool. I said, oof, when you moved to South Dakota because of moving in the winter. Not necessarily, I don't know anything about that town. I just wanted to be clear about that. But yeah, so throughout all this moving around and figuring out what you were doing for career, I imagine there had to have been a discouragement or two. Can you think of one or a couple that really stick out to you, and how you kind of got through those discouraging times?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest, most recent challenge was, it was the end of 2020. So it was the first full year of COVID. And it was really hard at the paper at that time. I was working at the St. Cloud Times. And I'll come back to this too when I talk about, why I'm doing what I'm doing professionally. But journalism has seen a decline in the number of reporters, and that's because of the business model. But that means that there's more work to do for the people that are still in the newsroom. And so I was experiencing burnout even before COVID happened. And then COVID happened, and everyone has their own challenge of how that looked in their own lives. And for me, it was becoming really hard to write about death a lot. I had been going through death records for the state and writing about a lot of the people that had died that year. I was a political reporter, and St. Cloud state senator died from COVID, Jerry Ralph, and that was very heartbreaking for me because I knew him. And then it became this big national political story that it was so politicized, and it really made me sad to see his story told and
Mm-hmm.
taken in that way. Um, and also at that time, I knew that I was looking for other work because of the way that the newsroom was shrinking, and there was a lot of pressure from the community that wanted more, but that we were smaller than ever. And so I had been looking for other jobs and been rejected, and I applied for a fellowship to write a book,
Mm-hmm.
and got rejected. And I was in therapy at the time, and so my therapist was helping me just like keep moving forward, even though like physically and mentally I was not at my healthiest at all. I was struggling, and and then I saw it, a post or an advertisement for an entrepreneur class. It was ILT Academy, which has been doing a lot of training across the state. So I applied, and it was free to participants. Um, so that was the first time I had written on paper my idea of launching a news organization. And because I really had thought, like, I can't, how could I do that? I was having a hard time. I just didn't get this grant that I thought, thought that that would be my next big thing. And then I got into the program, and honestly, when I think back, I'm like that. I mean, I was having really bad migraines. I was struggling emotionally, and I was burnt out. And I just showed up at this class once a week, learning about how to tell, how to develop a business that was needed. Basically, how do you develop your idea? How do you create it in a way that serves, where you have an actual audience of people that need that solution? And then how do you tell that story? So that was a 20-week course. And honestly, it was a lot of work. And I don't know how I did it. But just kind of pushing through, knowing that I needed to go to the next thing. And that because everything else I had tried was not working, that it was kind of a blessing that I was pushed to pursue this idea. I had had the idea for 2 years and had talked about it with some of my advisors. And no, everyone was encouraging. I just knew that it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of work that had never done before. And then the class showed up, and I was accepted into the program, and that really was a huge turning point for me, because I showed me how to talk about it and how to develop the idea, and then how to move to the next step of finding more financial support and making a plan to leave my current job and pursue this and build it into something bigger than myself. And so, yeah, in retrospect, it's I'm impressed with myself, because I know that it was a really bad time. And I think it was a bad time for everyone because of COVID. And you think about like the great resignation of November 2021. I was one of the people that left my job. And I think it was because um, living in a pandemic made us reevaluate, what's important. What do I actually want to spend my time doing? And so I guess just pushing through and having the support of a therapist and my spouse, um, that allowed me to move forward to create something instead of just kind of throwing up my hands. I'm very fortunate that I had that support, um, to just push through it.
Yeah. Wow. Inspiring. Incredible. I can't imagine the being a political reporter during all of that time, because a lot of things were politicized and in like some cases dehumanized, and so to see kind of that big figure for you be dehumanized like that. That it I understand why you wanted to create that tough thing and that job that was kind of sucking the energy and create something new that's does the opposite. It's all about the good things and resolutions and solutions and uh wow, so important. So important. Um so I kind of already know the answer to this because of Project Optimist, but I want to ask if you have anything to add about how you lead and create change in your community.
Yeah, I think something about Project Optimist and the work that we do, and it's not, so I do want to say solutions journalism is not always happy stories. Like there might be a story about an attempted solution that failed, because
Mhm.
those are kind of things that we can learn from. And it's not always like we might have a problem here and the story could be about a solution that worked or didn't work in a different state, and
Mhm.
what can we learn. And I love solutions journalism because it keeps that sense of possibility without denying the challenge of the moment, because we live in a really challenging moment. And I don't know if everyone sees it this way, but I think that it's a historic moment when we think about the environment and the challenges that we're facing environmentally, when we think about politically the challenges that we're facing with polarization and challenges to democracy through the decline of journalism as part of that. And that's to do with the business model, the decline of the traditional journalism business model. But that's impacting democracy. There are people sowing conflict because it's um, expedient to them politically or economically. There's war, there's illness. There's a lot of challenges right now, and I think that it's important to face that and to like sit with the discomfort of it. And I think that that is something that I'm personally getting better at, and that I'm trying to um, bake into Project Optimist through solutions journalism, through, I think art is part of that, because we need a respite, we need like a palate cleanser sometimes. And I think I'm also working on a conversation project that I think is important to that. So it's called Shades of Purple, Dialogue Across Difference. So bringing people together in different communities, and we'll have a couple virtual events as well, bringing people together to talk about really difficult conversations like gun rights and reform, or immigration, or climate change. It will depend on the community what the topic is. And basically, we bring people together to have an open and vulnerable conversation about, here's why I feel this way about this controversial topic. I mean, even abortion is a good example of it, because there's the political side and then there's all the personal views that people share. So these conversations really focus on the personal side so that people can rehumanize the other side, the people who have a different opinion. But I think the discomfort of that, the discomfort of accepting the humanity of someone who is different or disagrees with you. I mean, that's the way to combat polarization, but it is, I think holding the discomfort is really important in this challenging historical moment too, because there's discomfort in all of those challenges. And then to move forward and have a sense of hope for resolution and hope for improvement on all of those challenges, on community health, on environmental, on supporting the environment, on supporting democracy and coming together, and combating polarization so that we can solve some of those problems at the local level together. Yeah, I really do think that journalism and community conversation and even media literacy can help all of those things, because we can encourage people to open their minds, open their heart, and we need that to take on those really, really big problems. And I am always trying to do those things in my own personal life too. And I mean, gosh, it's really hard. It's hard. And I spend plenty of time doom scrolling too. But I do think that accepting discomfort and also maintaining a sense of hope and possibility for the future is what Project Optimist can offer, and what I'm hoping all the programs that we're working on will do.
Incredible. Thank you so much for clarifying what your mission is there. And I do kind of have a follow-up question. How do you feel like rural women could use more support in your community? And this is kind of a question I ask because we as an organization want to know those things so that we can better know what kind of things we can do to provide support.
I think I think moral support is very important and really can't be understated. I mean, that's one of the things that I like about 100 rural women. I mean, I am a Girl Scout now. I'm a Girl Scout volunteer, and I grew up as a Girl Scout. And I think that, it sounds kind of generic to say supporting women and supporting each other is really important, but um, it's not. I can't understate how important it is. I mean, it's very important to have people willing to say, "I love your idea. How can I help you?"
Mhm.
Or, you know, do you need funds? Do you need mentoring? Those kinds of things really make a huge difference. And I have felt quite supported in my project, and I think it's because it's hitting a nerve with a lot of the challenges of the moment, and the solution is really appealing to people. But I still have a lot of growing to do for the organization, and so I will be asking for money, and I will be asking for volunteers, and I will be asking for people to actually read it and provide feedback and share it when it resonates with them. And that kind of thing for me, I mean, that I'm trying to build a community in the way that news organizations build community among their readers. And I want it to be an inclusive community that includes rural people of all backgrounds, of all races, of all ages. And that's not really easy to do. There's a lot of work at each stage, and being inclusive requires kind of constant work and constant openness. So I will need and want and be looking for feedback at every stage of the development of the organization, as well as moral and financial support. And I think the same would be true of of most entrepreneurs, in addition to expanding their work, growing professionally and having community support is really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that and letting us know what you need as an organization. We're really here for 100 for rural women, and so we're going to take that and be able to provide that support now that we know what you need. So, thank you. And okay, Nora, if you could give one piece of advice to your former self, what would it be and why?
I would say that the path is not linear. And you could see that when I was describing my professional history and my education background. And I think each time I made a pivot, I thought like, oh, this is the big thing that I'm doing with my life. And um, and it's just been a journey, where one thing leads to the next. And some of it's been influenced by my spouse, and some of it's been influenced by my child, and some of it's been influenced by challenges and hardship in the field and in my job experiences. And but I'm so grateful to be where I am. I mean, I love what I'm doing, and I do feel maybe more than any other time in my life that even though the path was meandering, that it all is helping me now. All of those experiences as a server are helping me. All of those experiences managing books, managing conferences, um, being a journalist for 10 years, that all is a part and is helping me do the work now.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. The path is not linear, and uh, I appreciate that you can recognize that all those different things that you did were for purpose and are serving you now, because I like to believe the same thing. So I've got one final question for you, and that is, who or what has been your biggest inspiration?
I do keep a list of, they're mostly women that have inspired me, but I think kind of at the really top are my parents. Um, they are very involved people, and they have always been involved. They give a lot of their time and resources, and they both are really good examples of servant leaders, which is, it kind of took me a long time to understand what that looks like and means for me in my life, um, but they just are always helping and doing work behind the scenes to support organizations that they love and support, that they value, usually churches, but also other community organizations. And and they're also very creative in their own way, like they're kind of corporate. Their professions were kind of corporate, but they always maintain this very creative interest. And they both, I don't know if they both write poetry now, but they used to both write poetry. And when they were in college where they met, they um, published a literary magazine called Grub Street. And so they're just, they have that balance of being givers and being creative and also just getting things done. Um, and so, I mean, obviously they're my parents and I love them no matter what, but the older I get, the more I appreciate all of that, and the example that they set for me,
Mhm.
and also the example that they set for their church communities and their neighborhood. And they're just so involved and so um, committed.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Before I close out, I just want to ask if there's anything else you want to add or talk about before I wrap it up.
Oh, I didn't want, can I mention just a couple organizations that I'm a part of that I
Yeah.
really value? I did mention Girl Scouts, and I'm a Girl Scout volunteer.
Yeah.
But I'm also a fellow with the Initiative Foundation, and I'm a fellow with the Reynolds Journalism Institute, which is in Missouri, at the University of Missouri. And I'm a member of the Tiny News Collective. So Project Optimist is one of, they might be up to 15 members now. And they provide a lot of resources to us, but I love Tiny News Collective because they're trying to diversify and expand news ownership across the country, which is really important right now because of the decline that I alluded to, that traditional newsrooms are getting smaller. They're not serving communities as they once did. And so there's a lot of people like me popping up in communities around the country and doing this work. And I'm learning so much from them, and it's really inspiring. And those fellowship programs that I'm in are like the wind beneath my wings. They really have just made it possible for me to grow professionally and to do the work.
Awesome. Yeah, those sound like really, really cool organizations. So thank you for adding that bit in. And I also want to let you give a shout out to how we can, or watchers and listeners can support and follow you and the Project Optimist. Where can we find you?
So if you want to subscribe to the newsletter, which is really the most helpful thing right now, go to join.theoptimist.mn, and that will take you to a sign up page for the newsletter. It will also allow you to look at the archives of the newsletter and see the website once the website's fully developed. There's a page on that website to Shades of Purple, the Conversation Project. There's an About Us page. My email address, I give it out freely. It's nora@theoptimist.mn. If you want to get involved as a sponsor, writer, artist, anything like that, send me an email directly. We are on Facebook. I believe it's theoptimist.mn. That was our official name until a couple months ago when we switched to Project Optimist to encompass all of the work that includes training and conversations and all of that. So yeah, join.theoptimist.mn is kind of the hub for all of it.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much again for joining me today and for telling us about you and your project. And I'm excited for people to learn about it and learn about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.